Ladies and gentlemen, AI has gotten so powerful at this point to where it can do a lot of automation for your company as long as you know how to code it up properly. Only problem with that is that coding is pretty difficult for a lot of people and it's pretty hard to get started in. Well, what if I told you that we're now at the point where AI is strong enough to script itself on how to take actions on behalf of your company? If that sounds both awesome and terrifying at the same time, we're in the same boat, so let's get started here. So what is an applications programmer interface, or an API? Well, it has application right there in the name and programmer as well. So the programmer is able to access the application that you're using without having to actually open the app as a human being. So what does this mean? Well, if I have my information held in an Excel spreadsheet, the computer is able to automate the process of getting that information and using it for something in my code without actually having to have a human go into the app and retrieve that information for you. So we're gonna put that into the example of a Zapier flow, which is going to automate this process online. All right, so I have a spreadsheet here, and this spreadsheet has a bunch of different users who are interacting with my paid subscription company. And some of those users might be under a free plan, some of these users might be under a plus or premium plan, which means they're paying for it, and some of them might have canceled their paid subscription. So maybe I want to send out an email to the free users or encouraging them to upgrade to a paid plan. Maybe I want to send a follow-up email to the people who canceled, asking them why they canceled. Maybe I want to send an email or maybe I want to charge the plus and premium users so that I'm actually getting my money every month. So what information do I have to work with here? Well, I have a phone number. I could, pull out my phone and start texting each person individually saying, hey, I want to hear from you. Or maybe it's easier to do with email. And this is the one we're going to be using today. So let's take a look at what I built here with Zapier. And I know this looks very complicated. There's a lot here. There's more that we're going to be getting into later. But the good thing about Zapier is that you don't need to know too much. Well, you don't need to know any coding at all. You need to understand a little bit of what's technically happening here with what we've talked about earlier with the APIs and everything. But notice here, this is how I built the app, just using English text. So first off, the first interaction I had with it was just having it suggest things that I can do with Zapier, because I'm also learning this technology for the first time alongside you guys. So, it says we can do stuff with Google Sheets, Slack, Gmail, all these different apps that, are online, obviously. And all of these ones have the APIs that we were talking about. Not every website is going to have an API, but the ones that are in Zapier are going to, so that they can interact with each other and automate your processes in this way. So, I'm giving it some different ideas of how I want to interact with it. And eventually we get to this version of every week it does something with Google Sheets and then sends an email based off of that. But, I didn't like that. I wanted it to work every month. So I changed it from, it was originally set to every week here. Now it's on every month. I configured, I want it to choose the 7th day of the month, just an arbitrary day that, you can choose any day. I wouldn't recommend doing towards the end of the month because not every month is going to have a 29th day or a 31st day. Specified a time and then just had it test to make sure this part was working as intended. Then we moved on to the Google Sheets part, where I didn't necessarily take the exact action it gave me. I went here and I made a custom action. And if you see this button here, I have an ability to create a custom action, again, purely talking to it in the form of ChatGPT. So I could show the example of me doing it here, where, I literally just said, I want to retrieve the information in column D and the row specified. I gave it the information of, I'm going to be manually inputting the spreadsheet ID, the sheet name, whatever Google Sheets needs. And then it gave me all this, or I gave it more information, again, just talking to it, using information that I knew. For those of you who don't know, the spreadsheet ID is just the part that's, in between, like right here. You can mess around with this more, Googling this information, asking ChatGPT for this information or how you get this information. It's not going to be entirely handed to you by Zapier, but we have discussed previous resources where you can get the information that you need for stuff like this. And then, so I literally just talked to it in the form of a human, gave it some basic information, and then built this action that we have here. So even if the action that you're looking for isn't directly handed to you in the standard action section, you can, especially for Google Sheets, I don't know if every application works this way, but you can just create your own action here. So already I'm hoping you understand the power of what we're doing here. Next part, because, you know, we want to do this for everyone in the process. We don't want this to just happen one time with our top user and then, you know, be done with it. So Zapier has something called a loop, which if you've ever taken a very, very basic Python course before, you would learn about, you know, for loops or while loops, and that's essentially what this is doing. But again, you can create this just by talking in pure English vocabulary about what you're looking for. So let me see. Do I have the looping example here? I do. So I want to retrieve the data for a loop of a range of cells. So I said I want to take cells D2 and D2 through D6 and, you know, run a separate action based off the value that's in there. And then where does that take us to? Well, it takes us to me creating 4 separate paths down here, which again, you don't need to know the specifics of what Zapier is doing behind the scene, but, you know, for path A, I said if the value in this in the first cell of our loop exactly matches the value free. So it's saying if that, you know, if the first loop in our item is equal to free, it's going to do this. It's going to send an email like we were talking about. And, you know, I can create a draft email, I can send, and then I can send the email follow-up. So that would be 2 separate steps on our Zapier process. Create the email, whether using ChatGPT or something I wrote ahead of time, and then send the email after. Now, for our second option, this is if the value in that cell matches plus. So let's take a moment, step back, think about what we're doing. So we set up the first step that says we're going to be doing something that's going to happen looped over every item in the cell. So it's going to start with this first one, it's going to do the action, and then it's going to move to this one, and then it's going to move to this one, it's going to move to this one. What is that action it's doing? That's what's specified in the next step of our Zapier system. So after we created the loop, that's where the path ran off. So every single time it's going to re-enter this kind of filtering system. So now, you know, what is it doing if it's a plus user? It's going to be charging that account based off of however much my subscription is. Same thing for the premium model. And then for the canceled version, we could be sending an email, but maybe I'm adding a section down here for a Jotform survey, right? And there's a couple different options here. You know, assign form, right? So maybe it gives me a link that I'm putting into this email. And then technically that'd be going up here so that we can create the link first and then use it in the draft of our email. Okay, so this is a very basic understanding of how Zapier is going to be automating my processes for my company. Now, the most basic plan, I mean, there's the free plan, which is what I've been working with during this time. But in order to actually publish what I've made here, I would have to upgrade to a $20 a month subscription, which, you know, if you're working in the context of a full company, that should, generally speaking, be worth it, right? Because especially if I was thinking about how much I would be paying a human to do this on an hourly basis, it's going to be significantly more than that $20 a month, I promise you. So what have we learned here? Well, let's take a moment to think about all of the different possibilities that we could use this technology for. One more thing before we move on to the ideation session is that all of the information that I used to build this model, yes, it may have had like the slightest bit of information of my coding skills from being at Penn State, but 99.9% of the information I got about how to use Zapier this way was through all of the various forums I looked at just on Zapier's website about how to loop through processes, how paths work, all this different stuff. And, you know, like there are beginner courses on how to get into this stuff in a way that has nothing to do with coding. So just like last time, I want to open up a notes app and I want to ask this question. So I guarantee you there are processes that are happening at your company that you are not automating. At the very least, if you are not like a big tech organization, which, I mean, if you're part of that, you know, reach out. We can talk about some internships. But what repetitive processes happen at my company that are not automated yet, and how can I automate them using Zapier? So right off the bat, I remember, going into childcare. That was, where I worked before doing this. And I had to get trainings done, right? So reminding employees of what trainings they need to complete for their role. And especially at the context of my company, like these trainings would have to be redone after a certain amount of time, whether it's like 2 years or 6 months or a year, whatever it is. So maybe, we can set up a system where an email is sent out to employees with expiring trainings every month that reminds them to redo the training. All right, one idea. Maybe that works in the context of your company, but also if your company is the one and done type of training, this might not be worth the $20 a month to just tell people one time. Or maybe, as part of their final email of, receiving, like they're sending in their beginner, acceptance letter. Maybe we set it up to where on that original send, then it's gonna send out the, you need to do this training email. I apologize for my dog in the background. Let's see, what other ones did we have? Well, the parents would have to submit a, I forget what they call it, but like an emergency contact form. And this had to be done every 6 months. So again, along very similar lines, an email is sent out to families with expiring emergency contact forms. Let me see if I can make this bigger. This text is still very small. Let's see. There we go. All right, just making it a little bit bigger. Email sent out to families with expiring forms, reminding them to renew it. And maybe, we can update the spreadsheet once a new form is submitted. Now, maybe that direct, implementation works in the context of your company. I've thought about this a little bit, and the, we need to validate certain parts of the form before we can actually update the spreadsheet with that information. But maybe there is a way with JotForm to ensure that all of the information is valid information before we submit, or something along those lines. You have to mess around with the APIs that you're going to be working with here. But let's see, are there any other ones? Well, the families do have to pay on a very regular basis. So payment plans, or just recurring monthly payments. And then, charge a Stripe account at the end of every month. And remember, if you're doing the end of the month, I would recommend doing the 28th day. That way, there's always at least 28 days in a month, or, whenever your payment period is, if you do it on the 22nd or the 23rd or whatever. Are there any others that I can think of? Those are definitely the big ones. Just trying to come up with some last minute ideas, but I think even that, if you're able to automate these 3 processes, that is already, saving a significant amount of hourly pay for one employee that you otherwise would have to go through the full process of hiring. And if you have someone who does this as part of their job and they have the free time, maybe they can automate this themselves to where it's significantly easier for them to get this work done. So mess around with these technologies for yourself. What I want to do is I want to set up a live stream for Tuesday, June, oh boy, I didn't think of the day before this. June, I believe that would be June 10th of 2025, where I'm going to mess around with this some more. If you have if you're part of a company that wants to automate a process such as these and you're struggling with some of the technical components of it, let's talk about it in chat, or I could even start building out one of your guys' processes myself using Zapier to show you how the system is working. So join me for that. I'm going to start it early in the morning so that you can have it with your morning coffee. And yeah, I'll see you guys there. Thank you for listening.